heard it all before. You've even heard it here before. Meditate. Every teacher we know tells us to meditate. Meditation has become so well known and so potentially important in our Western culture that it's basically become a buzzword. That buzzword is, of course, mindfulness. And mindfulness is just an extension of meditation, sometimes even called mindfulness meditation. Since the most ancient of times, in every different culture, meditation has been taught and has been advocated as the most important spiritual technique. And indeed, it is the most important spiritual technique that there is, because it's simple, it can be done by anyone, anywhere, it can be learnt in really just a few minutes, in just a half an hour or so, and it can be practiced throughout your life, whatever your life circumstances may be. It's not necessarily related to your belief system. Many belief systems advocate meditation, but even if they don't, it fits with every belief system. It fits with every spiritual practice. It fits whether it's a spiritual practice we're talking about or just learning to live in the modern world. This very ancient technique that probably was designed to help improve spiritual progress works with our most everyday, mundane problems of life. So what we're going to do tonight is have a look at why, and really have a look at why meditation is so important, what effect it has on us, and why we should meditate. The examples I'm going to give you, the suggestions I'm going to make about why we should meditate, are all evidence-based. They're all based on studies that have been done and evidence that has been collected on the tangible effects of meditation. What I want to do tonight is almost lift it above just everything that is spiritual, which is still a very important place for meditation, but to show us that no matter what we believe, no matter where our spiritual progress is, to survive in this physical material world that we're living in, meditation is probably the best key that we have for that. In tonight's show, we'll be talking about why meditate and what the results and effects of it are, and in a week or two's time, I'll actually be talking about how to meditate, because so many people say, I can't, it doesn't work, I'm not that kind, I've got the wrong kind of mind, all those myriad of excuses that we have, we'll demolish and have an actual look at how to do it. But tonight, it's really all about why must we do it. The main reason why we meditate, the main effect of meditation that we can measure is that it reduces stress. And we shall discover that that alone can be responsible for many of the beneficial techniques that we do associate with meditation. But stress is a profound problem in our world, one that we actually take quite casually. We recognize it, and we acknowledge it, but we tend to say things like, I'm stressed right now, get back to me later, or I've had a really bad day, I'm really stressed, the kids must leave me alone, I've had a stressful week, I'll be better later on. And maybe we will, but we need to understand how dangerous stress really is. Stress affects our hormonal balance. It creates inflammations in the body, which now are understood to be the cause and source of many illnesses and many problems. It causes problems with the nervous system, the respiratory system, the cardiovascular system, the digestive system. Not just ulcers, but even diabetes is related directly to stress in many people, or can be worsened by stress in many people. And perhaps most profoundly, the immune system. We now understand that the immune system is not just about fighting off bacteria and viruses and things, but it's actually at the core of keeping the body in a strong and healthy state. And there are many diseases that are related simply to a malfunctioning immune system, let alone what they're supposed to protect us from. So stress is extremely dangerous physically and emotionally, and the long-term consequences can be fatal. Many of the things that I've referred to, if untreated, lead to fatal diseases. Cardiovascular system can lead to heart and stroke. Digestive system to diabetes, as I've said. There are so many, and yet we do little to prevent them because we don't really take stress seriously. If we understood that stress has such a serious effect on us, we would treat it like a dangerous disease. Imagine the scenario where you say, as opposed to saying, not right now, I'm pretty stressed, get back to me a little bit later. If we had to say, not right now, I'm fighting a deadly disease, get back to me later. Doesn't that sound really weird? Wouldn't the other person or yourself say, never mind, get back, get to hospital, do something about the deadly disease. Don't just wait until a better time of the day. That's what we need to understand, is that word stress. We need to do something about the stress, because stress affects everything in our lives, both physically and emotionally. Also because it affects what's called brain coherence, the ability to properly understand and process information. Of course, it affects our most basic mood. So the obvious effects of stress is anxiety. And anxiety is kind of as normal for us as stress itself. We've reached the point in our modern culture where we more or less accept stress and anxiety as kind of givens, as symptoms that come along with this difficult world and this challenging world that's full of so much stuff. And so anxiety becomes a norm as well. But anxiety dramatically affects our emotional state and our physical state as well, fills us with fear and affects all our relationships with people and the world around us, because we're anticipating and we're fearful. And we know, of course, that anxiety itself is a kind of emotional disorder. So it's often both the source of anxiety, stress is, and anxiety itself creates further stress. Anxiety and stress are this loop that work together, that enhance each other, and pretty much make everything a lot worse as they go along. But we accept that as a baseline normal. Also because we say things like, I don't have time to meditate. When meditation usually takes only about 20 or 30 minutes a day, for most of us, that's all you really need to do it. We still somehow don't have time for it, and we don't appreciate the extent to which the illness of stress and anxiety affects our management and use of time. If we're not functioning well emotionally and physically, then we are wasting a lot of our time. We do things wrongly. We overdo them. We take too many steps. We have to redo things because we make errors. There's so many obvious little everyday consequences of stress and anxiety, and not the least of which is the relationship with people around us. So there's so many places that kind of need the cure that you'd have to think, well, that half an hour given to your emotional and physical health is actually an excellent investment, because not only does it guarantee the long-term health, but actually changes the nature of that whole day. And when we meditate, our everyday becomes much easier to handle. One of the reasons is also because it affects our outlook on everything. It tends to enhance a positive outlook, it has been shown, and related to that, even our sense of ourselves, our self-image improves as our outlook improves. When we see ourselves not being stressed and not anxious, our image and opinion of ourselves significantly improves. And obviously, that goes out into everything else that we do as well. Positive outlook makes us approach everything differently, makes us get different results. And so we could say that meditation improves outlooks of many physical activities in the world. For example, meditation improves our success both at school and in career, because it affects all our relationships with people, it affects how we process information, it affects how we come up with and handle ideas, it affects the courage and ability we have to do the work at school or at the job or whatever it may be. And the end result can be we get the good results at school, or we get the good result at work, the goal that we're trying to fulfill. A tangible physical goal in the world, like the outcome of the task that you had to do, can be traced back directly to meditating that morning, meditating every day, which significantly changed how you handled the world. Because it's not only self-image and outlook, but actually self-awareness. When we're more aware of ourselves and ourselves in the world, we are more tuned into the world, we are more attentive, we concentrate better, and we even tolerate others better. It has been scientifically shown that concentration and tolerance both improve in people that meditate. And when tolerance improves, kindness improves. So it starts affecting the way that we handle other people, all other people, not just the people that we have relationships with, although those relationships have been shown to be significantly improved by meditation as well. When we meditate, well, as I said, when we stress, brain coherence is defined as a consequence of stress, the ability for the brain to understand and process information correctly. The inability to do that, brain incoherence, will affect all our relationships. But think for a second how it must affect our closest personal relationships. As you know, so much about personal relationships is about communication. And so much about what goes wrong in our personal relationships is about poor communication or miscommunication or something like that. That is often as a result of poor brain coherence, not listening properly, not understanding, not processing, and not communicating back properly. That whole thread can lead to a relationship disaster. Indeed, it can lead to the end of a relationship that was all based on too much stress. That isn't the reason why these people don't love each other, or it shouldn't be the reason why a relationship that is based on love and mutual regard is able to dissolve. It's very often stated that the biggest problem in relationships is communication, and when communication breaks down, inevitably the relationship will as well. And it's true, that is true. Communication problems are probably the biggest source of relationship problems. However, if we go one step further, we can say communication problems are probably the results of stress and anxiety, or, in other words, poor brain coherence. If we could only do something to improve brain coherence, the processing and communicating would dramatically improve, and relationships are not likely to go that far off the rails. We're more able to tolerate and understand, and are much more likely to negotiate successful outcomes. Remember, I said meditation has been proven to improve outcomes of all goals. Well, we can add that to the fact that not only is the relationship itself improving, but our relationship goals improve, like all goals do. That those relationship goals improve the relationship, the shared life that we have in a relationship, and the outcomes of that shared life. So you would think that rather than end up complaining about communication problems and saying we've got different styles of communication, all of those kind of things, all we need to do is, if we're willing to trace it back to brain incoherence, and we just think, okay, well then I've got to learn to meditate and spend 20 minutes a day meditating. If that could remove any potential relationship problems, wouldn't you do it? Isn't it a no-brainer? Meditation is a no-brainer because it removes a significant amount of what ails us in the bigger picture of life, be it emotional, be it physical. Life, as we know, is difficult. It is in its nature stressful. It's not just modern living. There are also more obvious and direct benefits from that. Things like the symptoms of mental problems that might relate either to concentration and communication, like I said earlier on, or even, as studies have shown, age-related mental problems. Studies have shown that age-related memory loss is significantly reduced by a daily practice of meditation. And if that's the case, for many people, that's reason enough to do it. One of the most frightening things that some people experience about aging is the change of mental capacity, is the increase of brain incoherence that just goes along with aging. If meditation is able to reduce brain incoherence, then once again, it's a no-brainer for dealing with aging. There's very little we can do about the way that aging gradually affects our bodies and affects our minds. There's not so much that we can do about it. We accept it as a natural consequence of aging. Turns out, though, there is something you can do. It might not expand your life span. I mean, it might. But we're talking about the studies, and the studies show it might not expand your lifespan, but it certainly improves your quality of life. And that quality of life, by improved mental faculties, communication, memory, all those things that trouble older people, it will improve our experience of age. Of course, it improves our quality of life, whatever age we might be. As I said, by improving all the everydays and all the relationships. And very fundamentally, by improving our health. So meditation's ability to improve health is not only related to the fact that it removes stress. Here are some of the ones that have been shown in studies to be affected by meditation. Firstly, addictions or other kinds of dependencies. Addictions themselves can be related to stress, they can be related to lots of deep other problems, and they can be related even to a need to escape. Escapism, the need to escape, is dramatically reduced if you've got 20 minutes a day where you literally escape from the entire world. And addictions, which usually indicate a lack of something or a need for something or an attempt to use something to fill a hole or have some other function in our lives, all of those are reduced by the reduction of stress. Most addictions are stress related, especially the ordinary ones. Most ordinary one of all, the most everyday one of all, is probably cigarette smoking, but it can be many of those. And so obviously cigarette smoking is related to both stress and unconscious habits. Stress is reduced, consciousness is increased, awareness is increased. A meditator is more likely to notice, why am I really smoking this? Some of that is easier said than done, but there can be little doubt that by increasing consciousness and reducing stress, addictions are lessened. That has been related by some studies to things like weight problems, because some weight problems are related to addiction, some weight problems are related to emotional problems. So there are many kinds of struggles with our weight that would be reduced by improved emotional behavior, by improved brain coherence, by less stress, anxiety, and addiction. So it's a knock-on effect. The meditation itself knocks on to reduce the anxiety, reduce all its consequences, reduce the physical problems, reduce the addictions that often contribute to those physical problems. It's like one little key unlocks all the doors, because studies continue to show that meditation reduces inflammation in the body. It's now understood that inflammation in the body is a major cause of serious disease, not the least of which are in the cardiovascular system, but many other physical diseases as well. And there are very few other ways to reduce inflammation in the body, because it seems to be something that is related both to foods, to emotional inputs, to stress itself, to hormone and other chemical balances in the body, to reactions to all sorts of things outside of us. All of that is improved because meditation improves our reactions to all things. So meditation then also reduces blood pressure, reduces the experience of pain, and improves sleep. So all of those have a knock-on effect on good health, to the extent that it's been shown that meditation improves outcome in dread disease treatment and recovery. Using cancer as an example, where most of those studies have been done, outcomes and recovery are improved, obviously because of the dramatic reduction of stress and inflammation in the body, as well as mental challenges, fear, anxiety, worry, too much thinking, all of those which can also be associated with the problems that arise out of dread diseases are dramatically reduced by meditation. So arguably, that itself can even improve the disease outcome. And it's probable that meditation improves the outcome of serious diseases that are potentially deadly. It might even reduce the likelihood of a serious outcome such as death. So, small investment, serious outcomes, serious benefits, some of which you may not even know about, which is great. If you're preventing disease, you don't get disease. You might think, meditation didn't do much for me, and you don't know. It prevented you from getting that very serious illness that might even have killed you. So, and then of course the other kinds of diseases, as I mentioned earlier on, things that are related to immune system, things that are related to infections and those kind of things, are all improved because we've seen how T cell counts. T cells are the cells your body creates as part of the immune response, as the most critical part of the immune response. T cell counts increase in people who meditate, even in people suffering from HIV, which is a virus that attacks T cells. T cell counts improve significantly with the practice of meditation. Related to all of those, but certainly on its own, meditation improves contentment and happiness, because happiness doesn't depend on external circumstances. We think it does, and that's often why we're so unhappy. As long as all those outside things change, I'll be happier. But happiness doesn't depend on outside circumstances. It depends on how our brain processes things, how we understand and respond to things is where happiness comes from. What we think about it, how we respond, if we chill, if we're anxious, all of that comes from us, not from the circumstance itself. And if meditation is improving our levels of contentment, if it's reducing stress, if it's improving how we process things, then it doesn't matter what the external circumstances are. They're likely still to be able to make us feel fine about it. We're less affected by all that outside stuff when the inside stuff is doing better. Ask any sports person. People who play sports and who succeed at sports know that success in sport is related to brain integration, the ability to develop oneself, to have a positive attitude about oneself, to integrate the whole sense of the self, and to have peak experiences. Those are all related to success in sport, and they're all related to meditation as well. Ultimately, perhaps the most fundamental benefit of meditation is that it can lead to spiritual progress and enlightenment. It stops the blur of life. Life is experienced as a blur. There's so much going on. There's so much we have to do. There's so much that we have to deal with that it very often does feel like life is just a blur. It reduces that blur. It allows us to see life as it really is, and it allows us to be focused and self-aware in the present. And whatever your spiritual leaning is, again, all the great masters define that sort of self-awareness and the living in the present as one of the most important keys to self-mastery. One of the greatest masters of them all was Krishnamurti, a modern philosopher, who said that we actually need some kind of sense of space in our self in order to find true sacredness. I want to read you from something that he said. How do we come upon that which is sacred? Is there anything sacred? He says we've looked for sacred everywhere, in gods, in worshipping this, that, the sun, the various things, but how do we ever, all of us, find and agree with what is holy? He says that can only occur when there is absolute silence, when the brain is absolutely quiet. Then you can discover for yourself that which is sacred if you are attentive, if you are watchful, if you are watchful of your words and the meaning of things, that you do what you say. As we know, all of these are consequences of meditation. But he says it's not through knowledge and not through the brain that you will find silence. The brain must be quiet. He says it's not through technique. It's not through some method, system, not by cultivating silence. Silence implies space. Have you noticed how little space we have in our brain? It's cluttered up, full of thousands of things. No wonder it has very little space. And for silence, there must be space. because that which is immeasurable, that which is unnameable, cannot exist or be perceived or even seen by a narrow little brain. If you take a journey into yourself, empty all the content that you have collected, and go very, very deeply, then there is that vast space, that so-called emptiness, full of energy. And in that state alone, there is that which is most sacred, most holy. Ultimately, meditation brings us to the most sacred space in the entire universe, the space inside ourselves. Remember to tune in next week at the same time. We'll be looking at how to meditate. See you then.